Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We'll be talking about college knowledge and identity. We have two fabulous counselors from Great Expectations College Prep presenting. Just for some background info, Julian Hoffman is an experienced mentor and admissions counselor with nearly a decade of expertise guiding students and families through the admissions process. In addition to his work supporting hundreds of students in gaining admission to universities nationwide, Julian has served as an admissions reader for the University of California, giving him valuable insight into what makes an application stand out. Allison Sherman brings over 15 years of experience across K through 12, higher education, and the nonprofit sector. A graduate of UC Riverside and USC, she has served as a school counselor, program leader, and education executive, supporting students from re-entry at the university level to college access in underserved communities. So with that, I will let them take it away.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. We're excited to have you here. So what we're going to do first is we're going to jump into the identity aspect of this presentation because building your college knowledge and identity really starts with you and who you are. So as we go through this presentation, I really want you to start thinking about your identity, the role that you play in your community and family, or the role that you want to play in your community and family, and then what your experiences have been. And these are all so important. Knowing who you are, knowing what you aspire to do is really important because number one, you want to find a college that is the right fit for you, but also it's really important because when you're applying to college in your college applications, that's going to be where you showcase your true identity, your true self. So, a lot of times in your college applications, some schools will offer you interviews where you can do something in person or it can be online. But a lot of times, colleges only see you on paper. So it's so important for you to be able to articulate who you are and show your authentic self because that's who they're trying to admit and that's what they're basing it off of. Now, as you start thinking about yourself and who you are and who you aspire to be, think about these questions. How has your lived experience shaped you, your passions, and your interests? What parts of your identity are important to you? What makes you unique? And what genuinely brings you joy and excitement? So, when you're doing the things that you're doing, you shouldn't just be doing them to say, I'm going to do this because it makes me look good for college. It's not how it works. And admissions readers are going to see right through that. We, as admission readers, want to see what makes you happy, what makes you excited, what makes you disappointed because those things all shape who you are and how you're going to contribute to that university. Like I said earlier, when you have all of this stuff on paper, what we're trying to look at is we're trying to see who you are and what your authentic self is. So at the end of the day, your goal is to make an application that feels genuine to admission readers. So if you're younger, if you're in ninth grade, if you're in 10th, sometimes these questions, figuring out, well, who am I? They can be really difficult. And you don't have to know the answer right now. You don't have to have the answer in a year from now. But if you start thinking about it, start growing, you'll be one step closer to that answer. And college really is a place where you do get to find out more about who you are. But the sooner you can start thinking about what, like who you are, what your identity is, then the better off you'll be. So now, how do we start thinking about who we are? How do we start building our passions, our interests, exploring ourselves? So, exploring your passions and interests through activities is one of the easiest ways to do that. So, getting involved in school really helps you discover your academic and professional interests, and it also makes you a stronger college applicant. So, one of the things that I've noticed, a lot of students will be involved in something very specific, like a sport. and they will be banking on, well, I'm going to be recruited anyway. So that's wonderful. If you're a really strong athlete and you have some sort of way to get recruited, that's amazing. But you also need to be prepared for the unexpected. For example, I have a student who I recently worked with, and they were banking on getting recruited for soccer, and then they tore their ACL. Uh-oh. And you know what that means? You need a backup plan. And these backup plans are your extracurriculars. And they're the most important thing, and they're the easiest way to really explore who you are to grow as a person. So, yes, get involved in things like sports where you can potentially be recruited. That's amazing. But also, make sure that you're participating in clubs and extracurriculars because that's how you're going to find out a little bit more about who you are. Some examples of things that you can join are a religion club or, like, I don't know, Jewish Student Union, Model UN. Maybe you aren't the strongest in communication and you get really nervous about speaking on a stage. Try speech and debate. I guarantee you it will help you grow not only your skills, but you as a person. Robotics. Maybe I'm really interested in building things and trying things and trial and error. Maybe I want to try coding club. All of these clubs and extracurriculars that you try now are there to help you grow, learn, and become the person that you aspire to be. Another really important aspect is volunteering. As an admissions reader in the UCs, that's probably one of the main things that students were missing. So students could have straight A's, could have taken every single AP, and I applaud you for that. And you're getting fives on exams. It's wonderful. But then I got to the volunteer section and there were tumbleweeds. And I was like, oh, so what else were you doing? So when you now, in this time, I would love to start have you thinking about, well, what in the world makes me disappointed, makes me angry, makes me upset, and what can I do to help solve that problem? Now, I want you to focus on this part, the end of that sentence. What can you do to help solve that problem? Admissions readers, and I am not telling you you need to volunteer and like alleviate world hunger and have it never be there again. You don't need to do anything groundbreaking. It's not, we're not looking for somebody who's doing something completely unbelievably impossible. I just want to see that you have something that you genuinely care about, even if you only impacted one person. If you impacted one person at the end of the day, that's incredible because you changed somebody's life. And think about how it connects back to you, how it changed you. Those are the most important things. So when you're thinking about volunteering, when you're thinking about getting involved in some way, don't always feel like you have to have the answer, or you have to be number one or doing the craziest, most unique thing in the world. We just want to see that you're getting involved in things that you care about. We're seeing that you are growing as a person, that you're learning about yourself, that you're learning about your identity, who you are, and what you aspire to fix or what you aspire to solve. Another way to get involved is participating in research or internships. Now, is an internship impressive? Some can be, yes. But we as admission readers know that not every student has those opportunities. We know we're not, like making sure that every single student has an internship. It's not a make or break situation. If you get an internship, that's wonderful. It's a great way for you to explore your interests, your academic area of interest. If you have the opportunity to do research, that's wonderful, especially if you're interested in something medical related or if you wanted to do something in the realm of engineering. It's fantastic to have those opportunities, but just know that in admissions, we're not expecting students to have that. But if you take it upon yourself and push yourself to do those things, that's wonderful. Another thing that people tend to kind of just like not really focus on is work experience. Work experience is really important, and I personally think that admission readers do value work experience. There's so much that you can learn from getting a job. Um, Unless you're doing the job and you're just saying like, oh, I'm working every day and then I'm going home. Okay, well, what you want to do in your job or in your work is when you get these jobs, really try to focus on the people that you're working with. Try to get to know those people. What are their stories? What has made them who they are? And how, in turn, could that help you understand who you are and what you aspire to do? Now, okay, now we're jumping into kind of the college knowledge type stuff. So, why attend college? What's the reason? Why should I even go? So, number one, yes, do college because it's a fantastic way to learn. It's a fantastic way to get involved and see your major and see what you're interested in. But college is so much more than just academics and getting a degree. Like, yes, of course, that's the end goal. But college itself really is a path to personal and professional growth. I can tell you from experience that going to college was such a huge turning point in my life. It was a way for me to grow as a person, find out who I am. I personally think college is really where I found my identity and like what I aspired to do. And I'm so thankful that I had that opportunity. So, yes, I did learn about a lot of different academic areas. I majored in classics, ancient Greek and Roman history, and I loved what I studied. But I think the best thing about college for me was that I really found a place, like my place, and where I could grow and what I could do. So, yes, college allows you to explore potential majors, careers, and other passions. Like, just a little bit about me. I know I told you I studied ancient Greek and Roman history, but I actually started college as a biology major. And I always told everybody there's absolutely no way I'm changing my major. I'm not doing that. I love biology. Well, 6 months later, I was like, never mind. I don't love biology. It's not my passion. So I started exploring and taking different classes. And I think that's the beauty of college is it opens these doors that you never thought were there before. And it shows you all of these things about yourself, all of these things about what you can learn and how you can contribute to the world. Another thing is, yes, it unlocks career advancement opportunities and increases your earning potential, which we will go over on the next slide briefly. Um, Another great thing about college, it expands your network, helps you build lifelong friendships, and allows you to connect with future professionals in and beyond your field. College is a place where you're going to be meeting so many diverse people, people from all over the world, from other countries, other states. It's going to be a place where you can build your tribe of people. And for me, I always thought my high school friends were like my lifelong best friends. But turns out college is where I found like the people that are the most important to me and that have been vital parts of my life. And I'm so happy for that because had I not gone to college and lived in the dorms, I wouldn't have met some of my best friends today. And there are a lot of fantastic schools out there. Like if you join a sorority or if you join a fraternity or if you join a fraternity that's like a pre-law fraternity, there are so many people that you can have in your network. And when you apply to jobs later and you potentially have that on your resume, somebody might look at that and say, like, wow, I was a part of that fraternity too, or I was a part of that sorority. And that's an immediate connection. And that's going to help you climb those ladders and meet other people. So, college really is a place where you're going to learn a lot inside of the classroom, but more importantly, you're really going to learn outside of the classroom and grow into the person that you probably never thought you could before. And there are also just so many other hands-on opportunities. These hands-on opportunities that we're telling you to get involved in, like with the research, internships, and so forth, I personally think it's a lot harder doing it as a high school student than it is in college. Depending on which college you go to, there are so many opportunities to do research, to get involved in internships, lead projects. Like, for example, I have a student currently at UCLA, and he's been there, what, 4 or 5 months. He already has a research opportunity just because he went to a professor and was like, hey, can I get involved? They were like, absolutely, come join my lab. So it really can be a lot easier getting these opportunities in college because you have those connections already. As long as you're getting to know your professor and you're, taking that initiative to get to know other people. But college, again, is more than just academics. It really is a space for you to grow and become the person that you want to be. So, this is just a some statistics kind of from it's a chart from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it just kind of shows you over the years what the income was of like the full-time wage and salary of individuals ages 25 and over with a bachelor's degree and then those who don't have them. And you can see that it's significantly higher when you have a bachelor's degree or higher. And look how much it's growing every year. And you can kind of see like less than a high school diploma, it's a little difficult. The more education you get, the higher your salary can be, and the more chances you have to make money. Because I guess, right, at the end of the day, making money is important, right? We all want to have it. So keep going to school. It is so important. Now, with all that being said, I'm going to pass it off to our fabulous counselor, Allison, so we can talk about identifying your goals.
Thank you, Julian. So we've talked about pretty much the importance of why we might want to get into college and thinking about what that pathway might look like. But we do want to also identify that there are different ways to achieve this, and there are different paths to your journey. There's certainly no one size fits all model, and there's definitely opportunities for different types of students who are coming out of different types of situations. And so we want to talk a little bit about what those paths are and how you might be thinking about how they align with your personal situations and your personal goals. First one we want to talk about, which is our most important, I would say most popular, would be attending a four-year university. A lot of you think about these as our Cal States here in California, or UC. So this is UCLA, Stanford, Purdue. These are our four-year institutions in which the overall goal is that you leave there with what we consider a bachelor's degree or a four-year degree. Okay. It's a very comprehensive educational experience. It requires the formal application process in which you have to meet the minimum requirements and able to be admitted and to attend. But it is your most common pathway to a four-year degree. Um, the second pathway, though, that we like to highlight is attending a two-year college or a community college first. Okay, and you've also probably heard these as like a junior college. So sometimes you'll hear it by way of a junior college. In a junior college, you're typically, oh, and I want to point out one thing. With your four-year university, that doesn't mean you have to leave the university in 4 years. I've had students that have been there for 5 years, 6 years, even 7 years. And so you're taking as much time as you need to complete the degree in order to achieve your bachelor's degree, in which you'll have your bachelor's certificate and you'll have a transcript that has your bachelor's degree on it, right? So jumping into the two-year college, that is by way the biggest difference between the two. You take 4 years to complete your bachelor's degree, whereas at the community college or the two-year college, you're taking 2 years to complete some other sort of associate's degree, excuse me, or certificate completion. Okay. So you're able to explore a lot of different majors and careers, and you're also able to build a lot of different types of skills, even intermediate industry skills. So this is you thinking about some of those vocational or certificated programs. So let's say, for an example, if a student wanted to get into an automobile repair, or you wanted to become an electrician. If some students that want to get into the healthcare field, and so they want to get a health certificate or a dental certificate, a welder, right? So these are thinking about some of those more specific industries that you're able to get these intermediate certificates that would allow you to start working in those career types. Okay. The biggest thing that we like to highlight about attending a 2-year college is that it is the starting point for the pathway back into a 4-year college. Okay. Students are able to attend a 2-year college, complete what they would consider degree transfer requirements, degree transfer requirements, which would allow them then, after they've completed those requirements, to transfer into a 4-year university to complete the remaining of their bachelor's degree. Okay, so technically 2 years at the 2-year college, and then an additional 2 years or so at the 4-year university to get you that same bachelor's degree. This is advantageous for a lot of our parents and students for different reasons. Sometimes it's more cost effective. It's significantly cheaper to attend a 2-year college than a 4-year college. So we have some families that choose to make this their first step. Additionally, if you haven't quite built up a really successful college application or college profile, then maybe starting here is a good route. You don't need to fulfill the same requirements to be admitted into a 2-year college. You don't need mostly any requirements really to be admitted into a 2-year college. So you're able to start this without any implications for how you might not have performed as well as you wanted to in high school, right? And still end up with the same degree as long as you take the appropriate courses at the 2-year level and then transfer into your dream 4-year college, if you will, to complete the rest of your courses for a bachelor's degree. Okay. So these are two really important pathways that can get you to the same end result. At a 2-year college, you can actually take a break if you wanted to and just stick with your associate's degree or your career technical certificate. But we do highly recommend that a lot of our students move on because you've already done a lot of that work. You're already 2 years in. It really is very easy for us now to move into our next stage to complete our bachelor's. Okay. Another way to think about an option in this pathway, we have some students that like to take what we call a gap year. And a gap year is exactly what it sounds like. It's a year gap before you move on to the next stage in your educational career. Students usually like to take advantage of this option for different reasons. You might decide that there's a job that you want to experience for about a year or so. Maybe there's an internship opportunity that came up that you're interested in. We have some students that like to travel abroad or travel with their families before they actually start school. So it's really just taking that time, taking that break, and taking advantage of whatever experience you'd like to have before you move on to actually going into that next step of secondary education or post-secondary education, excuse me. Something to keep in mind though, with a gap year though, if you still want to apply and be admitted into a 4-year university as a first-year freshman, you are only permitted to take the 1 year. If you do take anything longer than the one gap year that they're allowing, you then have to be considered a transfer student into that 4-year college. So technically, that would mean you would have to start your path at the 2-year mark and then transfer in as a transfer once you've completed the requirements. So it really does only have that waiting period or that cushion for that 1 year that they consider the gap year. The biggest thing here to remember is just there are different ways that you can attain your degree. And it really, to Julian's point, it really does depend on what your specific goals are, what your passions are, what your interests are, and really just now setting up the opportunity for you to take on whichever path you decide to. One thing that I do want to say, and I always say to all of my students, you certainly don't want to limit your opportunity. So even though you might be thinking in your senior year, hey, I want to take a gap year, or I really don't think that college is that affordable, and I just think I want to go into a 2-year, we do still highly recommend apply for those 4-year colleges, apply for the other opportunities that you can do. And once you're looking into your halfway through your senior year and you're able to start getting admission decisions, and you can decide then which opportunity you actually want to take a part in and which pathway you actually want to set up for yourself. Certainly don't limit your opportunity by not applying because you think you might want to do something earlier on. Okay, next slide.
Okay.
Mhm.
Amazing. Love that. Thank you so much. Now that we have all of that information, the next step really is kind of understanding the types of colleges that you can attend to achieve your goals, whatever those goals might be. So we're going to look at a few of the main categories. And we'll start with public universities, which in my opinion tend to be kind of the most popular. Public universities are funded by the local and state government, and they're typically larger. That doesn't mean that all public universities are extremely large. they do vary in size, which I think is kind of a good thing. So you have large, you have medium, you have some small ones. And basically, what I mean when I say it's funded by local and state governments is it's kind of that's why students pay less tuition if they're in state. So you have to be an in-state student, and you'll typically pay less tuition. Now, the pros, number one, of course, lower tuition for in-state students. That's pretty much like a big reason why in-state students tend to go for public universities because they are a lot more affordable. As opposed to going to, which we'll get to later, a private university, which can be pretty expensive. Another thing is they have a pretty wide variety of majors and programs. So there are a lot of ways to explore. There are a lot of things you can do, a lot of courses you can take. Some of the cons is that if you're out of state, yes, it's going to be a higher cost for you, which is disappointing, but unfortunately, it is the way that it is. Another thing is sometimes at the public universities, they can have a lot of them can have really impacted majors. And what I mean by impacted majors is that there are so many students applying and there just aren't enough seats available. Like that major is so popular, but they can't admit as many people as they'd like to. The other major con of a public university, especially if you're going to a very large one, is you're getting less personalized attention from your professors. So I want you to think kind of about your high school courses now. How many students are in those? You want to multiply that by, I don't know, 10, because there can be 200, 300 students in a large university, like in a course. So these public universities tend to have very large student bodies. And that just means that unless you're actually putting in the effort, you might have a hard time getting to know your professor. A lot of times at these public universities like UCLA, UC Berkeley, and so forth, a lot of the professors are really focused on research. And so it also makes it a little difficult to get that personalized attention from them. Does that mean it's impossible? Absolutely not. But you might have a little bit more of a difficult time doing that. Some examples of public universities are University of Wisconsin-Madison, love that one. University of Minnesota Twin Cities, University of Michigan, Michigan State. There are a lot of public universities to look into, a lot to explore. Now, private universities are not funded by the state, and they typically tend to be a little bit smaller. Not all of them are small, but most are pretty small. The pros is that they do offer more financial aid and scholarships. So you will see that like a lot of private universities tend to give some more money, but that's because the cost is kind of high, which we'll get to in a minute. Stronger networks and alumni connections, more personalized attention from professors. So with private universities, I think definite pros is that network and alumni connection. So, for example, USC has a very strong alumni network, and it is very advantageous to a lot of students. And that's, in my opinion, number one, that's like one of the reasons why I tell students to apply there because it is really helpful after college. That's the good thing about private universities is you do have that strong network and the personalized attention from professors is also really important. So if you're one of those students that really feel like you need that connection with your teacher, you go to them often for support, they are there to assist you with whatever you need, then you might want to consider a smaller school as opposed to being at a public university that could have thousands and thousands of students and you're just one of many students in a class. Now, there are some downsides to the private universities, and in my opinion, the largest one is the higher tuition. So you're gonna look at these numbers and your mouth might drop because some of them can be really high. Like for example, I had a student who was admitted last year to UCLA and Vanderbilt, and he was between UCLA and Vanderbilt and as one would be if they got admitted to both of those schools. But he saw the price tag for Vanderbilt and he was like, yeah, I'm not going there. It was 100K a year. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense because he was a California resident and I wouldn't want to pay 100K a year either. So that's one of the biggest cons. For students that are really involved, for students that have large friend groups, that love big cities, that love doing things with a lot of different people, a smaller student body might not be the right fit for them. They might kind of feel like they're missing out on things. So if you feel like you're that type of student that just wants to be around a lot of people, that wants to be in a large city and have that campus feel, a private university with a smaller student body might not be the right fit for you. Some examples: Northwestern, University of Notre Dame, University of Chicago. Um, Again, some of these privates are fantastic. They're incredible. It just depends. Like, do the pros outweigh the cons for me? And it really depends. And that's going to be something that you'll have to explore and think about. The next two, so liberal arts colleges. I personally find that a lot of students write off liberal arts colleges because they're like, no, not for me. But there's a lot more than meets the eye with liberal arts colleges. So number one, they're a lot smaller. And the one of the major differences in them is kind of like how you learn there, what you learn, what happens in classes. So in a liberal arts college, yes, most of them are actually private. So, but they teach a very broad range of subjects. So like when you think about your academics in a liberal arts college, it's going to be very different from something that you're going to get at just like a regular institution. You're going to be exploring a lot of different topics. So, from humanities to the natural sciences, there are lots of things that you're going to be exploring. The way that they design their curriculum is that it's kind of made so that you're able to explore many different areas before specializing in one. And that could be something that's really amazing, especially if you're like unsure of what you want to do. They're also designed to help students develop critical thinking skills, communication, problem solving. Um, it's a very different experience. And it really is, I think, for a specific type of student. But again, I find that students are always like, absolutely not. And I really think that students need to have more of an open mind to these schools because there are some incredible schools out there. And number one, the pros speak for themselves, in my opinion. So, easier access to professors, you have a very tight-knit community, and there are a lot of research opportunities. And this is all because these campuses are pretty small. And yes, I know, smaller campus, you're initially like, I don't know if that's right for me. But if you're the type of student that needs that additional support, if you're the type of student that really wants to have a connection with professors, that wants to make a large network of people, wants to have a tight-knit community, you want to have research opportunities easily, a liberal arts college is actually like a really great way to find that. Some of the cons: higher tuition given that they're mostly private. Yes, we know, unfortunately. It's not usually the large campus feel. They're pretty small campuses. And the science programs, like if you're a science person, they might be a little bit smaller, but that doesn't mean that they're not good programs. Some examples would be Oberlin, Carleton, Kenyon, Grinnell. Um, Now, just one thing to go back to, like with these private universities, yes, the cost of tuition can be very high, but they do tend to give pretty generous aid packages. And a lot of them also tend to give merit scholarships. So, it's not to say that it's going to be, I can't afford it at all. They do try to make them accessible to students. So there are opportunities financially to make it work. And we'll talk about financial aid in a few slides. Final one on here, I just put on just, so everybody could understand and have knowledge of all of the different types are land grant universities. more of a practical education in agriculture, engineering, and science. They are the pros, they have pretty strong programs, as you would imagine, in agriculture, engineering, and other applied sciences like computer science and so forth. And then typically more affordable for in-state students. A lot of them are publics, so as you know, in-state tuition cheaper. And then you have a pretty wide variety of major and research opportunities. Cons, if you're the liberal arts type person, it's going to be less emphasis on that, so you might not want to do that type of school. And then the class sizes can vary depending on what major you select. Some examples, we have University of Wisconsin-Madison again, Ohio State. Ohio State, it's a nice campus. If you haven't gone, I would recommend visiting. And Iowa State University. So, all right, gonna pass it on back to Allison.
Thank you, Julian. I had to get off mute. Okay, so you've thought about what might be a pathway for you. You've also thought about the different types of colleges based on what Julian was talking about. Now we want to think about your major selection, right? And so really being able to break down what that is and some different other opportunities or nuances to choosing a major. So first of all, what is a major? So simply put, it is your main field of study. So the area that you're choosing to study when you apply. Most of the time when you apply for your university, the application will also give you an opportunity to identify a major that you want to be a part of. A lot of schools will also give you an opportunity for an alternate major, which basically says, if we don't get into this major, what other major would you be okay with? Really important because most of the time, and I think we talk a little bit about this in a different slide, most of the time when you're identifying a major, it does kind of help the university understand which college that you're actually going to be a part of once you're joining the university. So keep that in mind. It is your main field of study. Then there are your minors. So where you could have your major, in which mind you, you can have you can double major. You can have more than one major. Where you would have a major, you also have an opportunity to pick up a minor. So it is not required for you to identify a minor. You do have to identify a major, but you do not have to necessarily identify a minor. Okay, but some students do like to pick up their major and then they want to do an additional minor. This usually comes with additional courses that you might take to fulfill your minor requirements, but it's an optional secondary focus. And it does not have to be related to your first major. So, as an example, we've had students that might be going into a science, like a biology, but they also want to pick up a minor in Spanish because they have an additional interest in that. Okay, or they want to go into the area of being bilingual. Whatever your goal is and whatever your rationale will be, picking up a minor is something that you do have an option to do. Okay. Then there is something to consider when we think about a track versus a concentration. So oftentimes, especially when it comes up for students who are interested in either pre-med, pre-dental, or even some law areas, we think about what your track might be. Your track is not the field of major and it's not your optional secondary major as well. Your track is really the pathway you'll need to take to complete all of the required coursework or mandatory degree work for you to actually get to that career goal in the end. So if you did have a desire to become a doctor or in the medical field, there is a list of different things that you would have to complete, both from your bachelor's degree all the way on to the other academics that you would have to complete. And so you'd be starting what we would call a pre-med track, which would be a pathway for you being able to actually do that. Most of the time, you would work with your counselor to identify what this track may look like for you. But it's just to keep you on a clear pathway so that your end goal of being in that area or that field in the medical, you would be able to be on track for that and complete the necessary requirements for it. Slightly different from a concentration. Okay. So if we were choosing a major at one of the universities that we're applying to, if it is a really large major that has a lot of different particular areas that you can focus on, that college might ask you to identify a concentration. Okay. So if we're thinking about biology, which there's a lot of different areas around biological sciences that they might want you to identify that you want to study, you might go a little deeper and pick a concentration for molecular biology. And so you're going to take courses towards biology, but then when you get into some of your later major courses, you're going to get a little bit more specific and into molecular biology because you've identified that as your concentration. Same thing for English, very broad major, a lot of different ways that you could use English as far as a career type. So they might ask you to pick a concentration, in which point you could do creative writing as your concentration. Okay, so those are the differences between your track and your concentration, which are not they are not the same as you choosing your major or going in and later identifying that you want to do a minor. Okay. This last piece is just thinking about a pathway that you can take towards choosing those majors, which would be direct admission. So when you're applying to your university, there's an option for you to go in as a general admission. But some students who know very specifically which areas they want to get a degree in or what kind of career field they want to get out of that degree, they may decide to do a direct admission into the university, which will then allow them to directly admit into the college that has that subject area that they want to graduate with a degree in. Some advantages here are that usually admission might be a little bit uh, I won't say easier, but there's a greater chance because you're identifying earlier and applying earlier than general admission students. Also, it just gives you an opportunity to go directly into that college as opposed to waiting to choose that major later and then having to apply into that college at a later time while you're a part of the university. Okay, so this is us just thinking about what we would actually want to study and how we would want to study that at the schools that we're choosing. Going into the next slide, this question comes up a lot with working with our students, either while they're applying to schools or even while they're in college currently. Can I change my major? The short answer is yes, you can change your major. But the long, more realistic answer is that it's not always as easy as a lot of students think. We have students that sometimes go into school not really knowing exactly what they want to do, and they have a few options in mind, and they say, well, I'll just choose this, and then later, if I don't like it, I'll go somewhere else. Quite possible, but there's things you have to think about. When you apply to a university, depending on what major you select in that application, you are applying for the minimum requirements to the university that you want to attend, but then also that university is identifying if you meet the minimum requirements for the college or school that houses the major that you want to be a part of. And if you meet those minimum requirements, you're going to be accepted into the university as well into the college or school that houses your major. If you at a later point decide that you want to change that major, it would be easier, one, to change it to a major that lives still or is still housed under the college or school that you've already been admitted into. Okay. So if I'm in the science, if a school of science, and I want to move from bio to chemistry, that might be a little easier because most likely those two concentrations are housed under the same college. However, if I'm a bio major and I decide I wanted to go into film, and now I want to therefore get into the school of film or theater, that is a different school. And so there might be a completely different application process, or there just could be things that prohibit you from even making that move, depending on what those admission requirements were from the beginning of the school year. Okay, so much easier, I guess, if you're changing within the college. It gets a little bit more difficult if you're going to be changing colleges to actually get into an alternative major. Okay, but still possible. First thing we would recommend is talking with the counselors at your school if this ever becomes something that you're interested in, so that you could be on the right path right away. Okay, awesome. So switching gears a little bit, we've talked about the different schools we might be interested in, majors we might be thinking about applying for, or the differences in those majors. But a big question that comes up for our parents and students are, how do we pay for it? Right? College is not by any means a cheap endeavor. And so there's a lot of different opportunities we'd like to point out to families on how this could be a possibility for you. Okay. The first thing that we'll talk about is what we call need-based aid. And so this is a process that you would embark on to see if you're able to get any sort of benefits or help for you paying for school based on different identifiers. Okay. Biggest point to point out here is that most of the time this process will always start with the free application for federal student aid. This is the federal application for students to apply and get access to funds that are given for students to continue their education. Okay. And this is usually by way of federal grants, work study, and then also student loans. Or for some of our parents on the line, it could be parent loans as well. Okay. Something to keep in mind is that the federal student aid is the application that usually starts your process off, whether or not you think you would be qualified for need-based aid or not. It is usually the first step that every private or public institution will require you to take if you at all want to be considered for any sort of financial assistance. So that includes need-based aid and scholarships. It is always the first application step. I would think it's so that all of our students, all of the students that are applying to the university are kind of living in this one accessible platform where they can then go on and decide how they will disperse funds for students to be able to access them. But either way, we say always start at this first step in applying with your federal student aid application. It's offered by most colleges and can reduce tuition for your family based on income. So that is need-based aid. Another way that we're thinking about how college can be affordable for us are scholarships. Okay. A lot of scholarships work by way of merit-based aid. So this is looking at how was your performance in school and how well did you do, or what kind of accolades did you receive that would allow you to qualify for some of the scholarships that we may be offering at the school level. But then there's also some private organizations that also offer merit-based scholarships as well. Something to keep in mind, same thing we put in the first bullet point. In many schools, if not all of them, the first step to even being eligible for a school's merit-based aid is also for you to fill out your FAFSA, your federal student aid application. They look at that information and then they can determine all of the different opportunities there is for that student to receive some sort of aid. So that includes merit-based aid, need-based aid, or any sort of grants that are offered as well. Okay. Um, Need-based awarded to family, excuse me, awarded based on family income and financial need. Now, something else to keep in mind when it comes to scholarships, they're not just for merit-based and not only for need-based. There's well, need-based, yes, but when we say need-based, it's not only always based on the income level of your family. In the financial student aid application, they ask a lot of a just general demographic about the student and the family. And sometimes if you fall into different categories, it would also make you eligible for these scholarships that are available at the school. The school is looking to offer students that might have been in the foster care system, which is something you identify on the federal student aid application. Then they'll be able to see you as a former foster student and offer you whatever sort of benefits they have for there. You could be a student that was a part of a single family household. They may identify that information and say, oh, we have some opportunities for financial opportunities available for this particular demographic of students. So biggest points here, it is important to make sure you're filling out that application and really every detail that is asking so that you can be considered for income-based aid, merit-based aid, or some of that kind of need-based demographic aid as well. Okay. And the final point to point out here is that a lot of the colleges do have or offer special programs for students who do not meet a certain, or students and families who do not meet a certain income threshold. This is really important for some of our big kind of Ivy League, high-end schools. They are looking at families and saying, hey, we have a really expensive school. Your student has worked really hard to be a part of being admitted to our school. And so as a bonus, if you don't meet a certain income threshold, your student can attend here for free. So some examples are those. For Princeton, families that make an income of below $250,000 actually have free tuition to Princeton. And then on a similar note, for Yale, families that have an income of 100,000 or below, they have their costs covered by the university. And so there's a few schools that actually operate this way. It's highly important that you pay attention to your school's website under their financial aid and scholarship section. And they point out exactly how a student could be eligible for some of these different opportunities. Okay. Okay. Next part. So what types of schools are there? How do we pay for school? And this next part is, okay, this is a lot of information. What are just my first steps? What do I even do? I don't even know what school I might want to be a part of. I don't know where they are. I don't know what they look like. And so college exploration is a really, really important part of this journey and you making the right decisions for yourself in your academic journey. Okay. And so some things that we want you to consider when you're thinking about the type of college that would be right for you. Factors that are important. First thing we want to put on here is location. Location, location, location. Where do you want to be, right? Some of our students come out and they say, hey, I would love a big city. I want to see tall buildings. I want to see a lot of people. I want to walk from here to there, and I never want to drive a car. Okay, well, there's a few locations that would be ideal for you. And other students may say, I want to walk outside and it's green with cows and farm life and whatever that might look like. But that is going to be different for each person. So you can't necessarily choose schools all the time based on what other people might be looking to do because you may have a particular interest that is different from theirs. So where is the location of the schools that you're looking at? The size, to Julian's point, do you want a smaller, more concentrated classroom size where you have more intimate connections with your professors, or would you prefer a larger school where there's plenty of things for you to get into and plenty of people for you to meet and clubs for you to participate in? And so thinking about the size of the school, diversity, there are different types of schools that have different types of students. Some have heavily focused on the female population, the male population, different demographic of students. So are you looking for something that's a little bit more diverse, or does it not really matter to you? Those are all things for you to consider. Campus culture, right? What type of experience are you looking for? I'm sure we've heard the term, well, that's a party school. Well, it is a true term. There are schools that are party schools, right? And there are schools that are a little bit more quiet and have a really huge emphasis on study. And so these are things you kind of don't really know unless you've kind of taken a trip up there to see, or you've talked to some students that might have been a part of the school, or you've logged onto a couple of blogs that are talking about their experiences at the school. So there's a lot of ways for you to kind of explore that. But campus culture is going to be something you do want to take advantage of, because if you're looking for a particular experience and you go there, I've had students that go to their parents and say, oh, well, college just isn't for me. This isn't the experience that I was looking for. And that might not be the case. It just might not be the culture that you were looking for. You were looking to experience something a little differently, and now you're at a school that has a complete opposite culture, right? So thinking about your campus culture, and then your social life. Are you an introvert, kind of quiet? You're looking to kind of have a small group of friends, or do you want to make sure that your university has an opportunity for you to be in front of thousands of people, right? There is a difference between the type of social life that you want to have in the schools that you choose. Other factors to keep in mind: major availability. This is a big one. Personal story. I always thought that I was going to be an actress. And so when I graduated my senior year, I went to UCR thinking that I was going to become a theater major, only to learn that UCR didn't have a theater program. Right. So I went there and I'm like, okay, what do I do now? Not only they didn't have a football team either. I was just all kind of upset. I was so upset. But look, so exploration is really, really important. I'm like, you don't have two of the major reasons why I wanted to go to school in the first place, right? So I ended up, going into film for a little bit. And I'm like, film and theater are not the same. So it was a whole thing. I stayed at the school. I ended up loving the campus culture, loving the people that I met. But that's a story that I take with me forever because I didn't explore. I didn't make the decision based on the major that was available that I thought that I wanted. And so that's something really important for you to keep in mind when you're thinking about what college you want to be a part of. Um, Selectivity and acceptance rates. So the reality is we have our GPA, we have the kind of uh, college profile that we're building for ourselves. Some of them are stronger, some of them are a little bit more average. That's just the reality. I was an average student at the beginning of my time. I've grown into a very collegiate student, but just depending on when you're applying, you're at a certain level and there might be a school that is in your sights, but you just might not meet those minimum requirements. So really thinking about what schools actually might be within my purview. We usually like to tell students to, try for your reach school, try for a few schools that you might be a part of, but then also make sure you have those safety schools, right? Making sure you're applying for schools that you know that you will be able to get a part of because you've exceeded the admissions requirements and the acceptance rates might be pretty high, right? And then cost. It's obviously always a concern for our families and our students, making sure that they can afford college, thinking about that cost of that particular school compared to a different school, and whether or not it makes sense for you and your family to actually make those decisions to go to a school based on that cost. Okay. Um, Other things to keep in mind in college exploration are the majors and what this does for you as far as your future. What are you really interested in studying over the next 4 years? And is this a subject that you would want to do even if there was no money tied to it? Is this an area that you feel like would be of interest to you? If it completely evolved and transitions, like you just are super passionate about it. So really thinking about your area of study and how that might inform the type of school that you decide to be a part of. Okay. What are your long-term goals? If you know that your long-term career path would mean that bachelor's degree is just your first step, and there's multiple steps that might want to take after. You're looking at majors and schools that align well for you now applying to the next stage in your academic career. So that graduate program or that other medical program or that JD program, whatever that might look like, you're looking for schools that kind of might have a good pathway or make sure they have an appropriate way to set you up for that next stage. So really thinking about those long-term goals. And then always really, this is kind of back to selectivity. Majors can be highly competitive. So you could be very passionate about, you know what, I'm going into business. I want to open up my own companies when I get older, or I want to sell companies, or whatever that might be, or I'm passionate about engineering. I know I want to develop the next blank and want to become the next whatever. Like that might be something that's on your mind. But depending on the universities that you're considering, that major can be highly competitive and highly hard to get into, which and then forces you to choose an alternate major. Okay. And so thinking about a person who was always super passionate about where you wanted to study, but yet there's some gray areas to if you'll be able to do it at the few schools that you are interested in because of how competitive it is. So you might want to think about alternative schools just so you can stick to that passion major that you're interested in. Okay. So really thinking about what the major is it highly competitive? And if that is the case, I might need to spread my reach a little bit more so that I can go towards a school that I can still stick in my major and I won't be not considered for that university based on it being so highly competitive, which really could be outside of your control. It's not meaning that you don't meet the minimum requirements, but it's meaning if there's only two spaces and 100 people apply for it, it's just pretty hard for everyone to get what they want, right? So there's just some things to consider when you're exploring your college. It isn't as simple as where everyone is going or what school might be available in your area, or I want to get as far away from my town as I can, and so I'm going to go across the country. That's all great logic, but there are some more detailed things that we might want to consider so that we can really choose the right school for us. Okay. Okay, awesome. So from exploration to application, we've done all of this great thinking and work and really figuring out what it is to go to college, what type of colleges are available, what type of majors we might want to select, how do we pay for it, and how do we choose it? What is the step after that? Okay, you would have to apply for whatever colleges you might be interested in. This is at the 2 year or the 4 year level. Lucky for you, 2 years, you're going to get in if you apply to a community college. They accept everyone for the most part. But when we're thinking about our 4 year application, that is a little bit harder. Okay. And so you really want to think about what your college profile looks like, how you have set yourself up over the 4 years of being in school, which makes you a great applicant for the school that you want to apply to. And how do we do that? You have to build your profile. Okay. You're taking care and you're maintaining yourself academically. So you're maintaining that strong GPA, you're taking competitive courses, you're challenging yourself with some of the additional opportunities. Maybe it's a different club that requires an application process or an internship that's offered by one of your teachers, whatever that might be. You're staying competitive in regards to that academic side, but you also want to get involved. As Julian mentioned earlier, schools are looking for a well-rounded student is how I like to call it. So though you've done really well academically, you've done really well with performing in your classes, what else did you do with your time? What else did you contribute to your school, contribute to your neighborhood, contribute to yourself as far as exploring your own interests and goals? So getting involved, whether that be at the school level, the community level, what does that look like to just actually get involved with different areas so that you really can build this well-rounded profile to show universities that you're an asset to their school. If they grant you admission into their school, you're going to be able to do something powerful while you're there. You're going to be a very strong person. You're going to build very strong work, a very strong researcher. They're looking to identify those students. Okay. I like to tell students like a college wants to see how are you going to change the world? Literally. They think about how would this person change the world? And if you're only showing them that you can maintain a 4.0 GPA, they're going to say, well, they're going to be really intelligent. That's for one. But what else do they care about? What else do they even care about the world? I don't know. They haven't participated in anything else for us to understand that. Okay. So what's your contribution to the university and how are you going to change the world? Okay. Craft your story. Think about your grand narrative. What makes you unique? We're all very different. We have different interests. We have different things that we want to explore. We have different skills and abilities. And so you being able to paint that picture for your university is really important because once again, they're looking at what does that student look like and how they're well-rounded and who are they? Who are they and how are they going to contribute to this school? So your quirky little things about you or your different little interests that make you unique. These are really special things when it comes to how you show them to a university that you're applying to. And the way that you're going to be able to do that is how you're demonstrating them, what you're participating in, what types of clubs are you participating in that have some of those quirky interests that you've identified. What are you actually doing to show who you are so that that then could be translated to your college application? Okay. Your college essays are also a great way to highlight your identity and your experiences and your passion. So where you've designed this profile for yourself and you're being very involved and you're doing these extracurriculars and while also maintaining your GPA, your essay is now an opportunity for you to tell them about that. So how were you getting involved? What did it mean for you to partake in, some of these AP classes as well as this job for the first time or this apprenticeship that you did in your junior year? Like they want to hear these stories, and that's a great way for you to be able to share them is in a well-crafted college admission essay. Okay, so thinking about your essays and then show how your journey aligns with the college you're applying to. A school wants to know that you're here for a reason. You're applying here for a reason. You didn't just see the name or hear about the school or knew that it was a top Ivy League school and say, "Hey, I want to go there." No, you've actually been able to identify through the interest, the things that you're participating in and your college essays and all the other ways that you've put together your college application. You're able to identify to the school that you understand the type of school that it is and you feel like it's important for you to be a part of it. I understand the school that you are, what's important to you, what you research, and what is your output into the world. And I feel like I could be a contributing team member to that. And I want you to let me into the school so that I can continue to contribute to what you're already doing. So make sure that the schools that you are applying to do speak to you in that way. If the school doesn't have majors you're interested in or clubs and activities that you're interested in, then it might not be the school for you. If they're publishing essays and publishing research papers that don't move you, you're not interested. You thought you were into that major, but yet you don't want to read about anything that the school is doing. That might be something that you want to consider, right? So thinking about how does the school speak to you? How does it align with you? And then you being able to demonstrate that in the college applications that you are using to apply to these schools. That's going to be really important for you to really make sure that this application process works for you and you're able to evolve into that next process of actually going into that school and taking part in all those great experiences that are there for you. Okay, so some next steps. We've talked a lot. There's definitely some things for everyone to think about from the training today. But the biggest thing is for you to do your research, right? We've painted a picture of the different areas that you can think about your research, the types of colleges that you want, the sizes, the concentrations, all those different things. So doing your research and really being able to develop a list of schools that really resonate with you is really important, including some of those admissions requirements and how you are in the process now with building that college profile and you're aligning those admissions requirements with what you're already doing, right? So doing your research. Second part is visiting the college. Very, very important. Colleges look different in pictures than they do in real life. They even smell different, right? So you don't want to go into an area or a school loving the very high picturesque of the website and then you go there and it's just not the school that you thought you were getting involved in. So taking those tours in person, even virtual tours have become really, really advanced over the years. They really give you a good indication of what the school looks like. But I love in person though, so you can actually see students on campus too. But explore the colleges. I highly recommend that whatever school you're adding to your list, you're now putting into your calendar for you and your family to take an opportunity to go explore and see that school in real life. Okay. Some handful websites, helpful websites that we like to send students to. The first one is going to be Big Future at collegeboard.com. That's the College Board website that really allows you to start a lot of your exploratory work on what college is for you. It even talks about college affordability. It talks about scholarships. It talks about the types of colleges that might be good for you. You can set up a profile and it can help you kind of direct you to certain things that would be good for you. But bigfuture.com is a good one, bigfuture at collegeboard.com. And then the other one would be niche.com. So it's another opportunity for you to put in a few fillers and filters, excuse me, and they can pop out some good colleges for you, what the college is known for, how is it rated, all of the different majors that it provides. So these are two good websites that can really be a starting point for your research. But in addition to that, we have the fifth guide of colleges in 2026, so you can purchase this as well, or I think it actually might be free online. And then if you have a school in mind, just typing that in and you just doing a general search on the school and saying, okay, if I want to make sure these things are in order for me to go to this school, let me type in the school, go to the website, do some deep diving into that, and really see if this is still the type of college that I want to apply to now that I've done all the research that it would require. Okay, so these are some good, simple steps that you can start with now, no matter what grade that you're in, to really start developing what schools you'll be applying to and how you can really start crafting this college going journey for yourself. And now I'm going to pass it back over to Julian. He's going to close us out.
That was so amazing. Thank you so much, Allison. I hope everybody was paying attention because that was a lot of very, 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 very good and very helpful information. So number one, if any of you, we're going to jump into a Q&A right now for anybody that has any questions, but just before we jump into that, number one, thanks everybody so much for coming tonight. And if you do have any questions, you can scan this QR code on the bottom right. And you can sign up for a complimentary 30-minute one-on-one consultation. And we would absolutely love to see some of you again. But let's jump to the Q&A.
We do have a few questions. The first is, what is your recommendation for students who aren't very involved in their school or communities right now?
Um, I'll start first. I think number one, start now. Just get involved sooner rather than later. It's never too late to get started. Colleges really want to see that you are committed to something, that you want to grow, that you have grown. And it's just about finding one or two things that you're really passionate about. Maybe exploring an academic subject that you didn't explore yet. So, like if you are interested in a specific major, maybe doing a course over the summer. If you haven't been volunteering, starting sooner than later. And look, again, like I was saying earlier, it doesn't have to be some grand thing. It could be volunteering at an assisted living facility. It could be volunteering at a food bank, something to show that there's something that you care about. We're not necessarily looking for a laundry list of activities. So, like, if you fill all 10 sections of the activity section in the application or 20 for the UC application, that's great. But if those activities didn't mean anything to you, then I'm going to ask, well, what was the point? What's the why? What was the impact? So even if you find one thing and you get some depth in it, that's going to be impactful. And that's going to also give you something that you can write about in your essays.
Great, thank you.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
sorry.
agree. And then the only thing too, I would say too, even to tag on to Julian, is I also have students that make that statement like, well, I'm not doing anything. What should I do? And then I start asking them questions about their time. Well, what do you do on the weekends? What do you do here? Do you ever help your mom at work? And then they start picking out these different areas where I'm noticing, well, you do some extracurricular things outside of school. You just haven't identified them as extracurricular activities. And so I also recommend that they just deepen some of that work. So I had a student, for example, who her mom worked, I think her mom might have worked for an assisted living facility, and she would go there and help her mom, and she would read to the some of the people that live there. And I said, well, why didn't you say that? She was like, well, I'm just helping my mom. My mom makes me go because she doesn't let me stay at home by myself. I said, okay, that's fine, but you are doing something. And so this is something that you can just deepen, and now it's an opportunity for you to showcase how you're now volunteering. And so I encourage students to start with some things that they are doing that they may not have deemed to be building their college profile. And then to Julian's point, start doing more, start developing a passion for it, and then you understand how you can articulate that in your college application.
Perfect. Thank you. Someone also asked, do you have advice for students who are interested in highly competitive majors?
Um, I will jump into this. I think if you're going for a really competitive major, number one, um, I love that you have goals. I love that for you. It's amazing, and you should always like shoot for the stars. But at some point you need to just think about like the realities and be realistic. Like a lot of students are gunning for that specific major. Do you want to make it challenging for yourself and have admissions be that much harder? So if you are going to be, if you're younger and you have time to really build out your profile, make sure that you have a really strong academic foundation. Like, look into the major, start exploring, get involved in any way that you can, take courses, do a summer program, do some sort of extracurricular volunteer opportunity related to it, showing them that you have a genuine interest, that it's not just like, oh, it came out of thin air. Because we want to see that there's some sort of exploration and that there's some sort of depth there. Um, then also seek like other relevant experiences. But if you are in a position where it's like, well, I haven't really done much and I don't really know like what I would write about, then my advice would be to think of a major that's under the same umbrella. So, like, for example, psychology is surprisingly really competitive nowadays. Some alternatives, so long as you can make the argument for it, might be like sociology or communications, or if you have like coding or computer science background, cognitive science. So there are different ways to get to those competitive majors, but if your goal is kind of like what we were talking about earlier, like I'm going to apply as X major and then transfer in, could it work? Maybe, but I encourage you to, number one, speak with a counselor, but also, number two, really look into the requirements for transferring into that major because you might go on a college's website and it might say, like, all you have to do is take these courses and you can transfer. Or it could say, it's a lottery. And trust me, there really are schools that say that. Like if you want to go into this major, it's a lottery, it's a random selection. Sometimes you'll get it, sometimes you won't. So it really depends on the school, it depends on the major, but there's not always one road to whatever your end goal is. So like in order to be in order to do pre-med, the track, you don't always have to major in biology. I knew a student that majored in classics, which is what I majored in, and was doing pre-med. So there's always a way, a different road to get to your destination.
And then on the flip side, we also got a question for students who just want to start a business. Is college really that necessary?
Um, the short answer is yes. Um, and that is because, as Julian kind of pointed out earlier, there's a lot of different other benefits to going to college. It isn't necessarily because it is a specific pathway for you to reach an end career. There's networking opportunities, there's different skills development, there's maturity that you experience, there's the social aspect that can play a role in if you become a business owner. So all of these things really do matter. But and then there's also kind of the notoriety to it. You know, if you're looking to start a business, you're going to be probably you could be looking into a business loan, business partners, business opportunities. And so people are looking at what do you bring to the table by way of experience. And so if you have a degree in the area that you're looking to start business in, that could expand some of the opportunities that you would have. So I've had this question come up with a few students in the past. who, don't have a particular interest in college because they're just kind of over it. They're done with school. It was pretty tough for them, or they've had some negative exchanges or experiences. I get it. But it's to a point that I mentioned earlier. You don't want to be on the side of limiting your opportunity. If you know that you want to be a successful business owner, going to college is only going to increase that opportunity. It's no deficit. There's no con. It is only going to increase your opportunity in being a small business owner or a large business owner. And it's going to increase it by a whole different, a laundry list of different ways, that we've mentioned earlier in the presentation. So it's all about not limiting yourself. So yes, I think it would still be important to make sure that you're getting that degree and you're getting those extra experiences that go along with it and that different opportunity that goes along with it. And it's allowing you to bring that back into whatever business you want to develop and be that much more successful.
Great, thank you. And then lastly, someone said, I made some mistakes in high school. How can I still go to college?
Well, I think a lot of us have made mistakes. And when you're applying to college, admission readers know, we know that you're human. We know that people make mistakes. We also know that one mistake doesn't really define who you are and what you're going to become or who you want to become. Um, if there's something like maybe academically you screwed up in like ninth or 10th grade and there was something that happened, well, we're looking at your overall growth. We're looking at if there was an upward trajectory in your academics. So like a lot of times kids will think like, oh my gosh, I like really screwed up my freshman year. I got B's, I got C's. So if you kept getting, B's and C's, and then in 11th grade you started getting D's and F's, then it might be like, oh, what's happening? But if you had a difficult start, sometimes the transition to high school is really difficult. If you got like B's and C's, but then you took more rigorous courses, you started getting straight A's, and you started really getting involved, that's an upward trend, and that's what we're looking for. So sometimes when you make mistakes, that's where you learn the most. And those are things that you can mention in your college applications. Those are ways that you can show your maturity, you can show your growth, you can show that you're ready and prepared for the rigor of college. So like don't feel disappointed if you did make a mistake or if something happened, because again, we know that you're human and we all know that we make mistakes, and life is all about growing and learning. And again, sometimes those biggest mistakes you made are the learning experiences that change your life. So,
Great. Well, thank you so much, Julian and Allison, and thank you for everyone who attended. For everyone still on the call, we will make sure to send out an email tomorrow with the recording link in case there were any slides you want to go back and review. But in the meantime, hope you have a wonderful rest of the evening, and thank you again.
thank you so much, everybody.
Right.